Well, I'd speak to Dr. Sam Amadi, a RISE analyst on some of these developing issues. Very warm welcome to Newsnight, Sam.
Thank you.
The PDP is fired a salvo directly at Mr. President, well, arising from the strained economic situation Nigerians find themselves. And the PDP governors, they are asking Tinubu, look, if you can't solve the problems, throw in the towel, resign. But does that have any constitutional backing?
Well, it doesn't have to. They're not really making a constitutional pronouncement, and they're not under any illusion that saying so compels Tinubu to resign or triggers any legal effect. But what they're doing is what Tinubu and the APC did in 2015, build up to 2015. I mean, when Tinubu, then Alhaji Tinubu, now President Tinubu, he should tweet saying, Jonathan, if you can't control insecurity, resign. I mean, several times, several tweets. So this is typical opposition party. Things are bad in the country, clearly. I mean, the government itself concedes. But then it's a question of whether it's because we're not doing well or because factors are behind us, whether it's middlemen, whether it's Sahad sons. You know, they will pass the blame to someone. So what PDP is doing, like a typical opposition party, is saying, Mr. President, things are getting bad at your watch. And in that situation, if you can't fix it, resign. I mean, they also say in that statement that, look, we are willing to work with government. So essentially, the other way is political talk. Resign. Of course, Tinubu is not going to resign, most likely. But that basically say, look, Mr. President, we'll find you incompetent. We charge you with incompetence. We are saying you failed. You had a mandate to do something. You're not doing it now. APC will come back with a retort and say, look, guys, you guys ruined this country for the last 100, whatever year. You know, we are fixing it. Things are difficult. So this is the kind of big bat, the kind of to and fro, hit and dodge, and hit and miss and hit back. They expect in the democracy. Very fair. Now, but what flows from that is that the PDP itself says, we're not going to be an obstructive opposition. We're not going to be opposition that's not going to cooperate. But we are saying, you guys have failed. This is what APC would have done, and they did when they were in opposition. And this is what PDP did not do in Buhari's period of 8 years. We are kind of, they let government so loose. The messaging is, when things are bad, even if you look at the US all over the world, even if it's not the president's direct fault, at your watch, insecurity, the economic collapse, if anybody attacks, if Al-Qaeda or any group attacks the US today, it's Biden has failed. And the Republican Party will say, Mr. President, you should be impeached, resign, right now, you failed. That's the right thing to expect from PDP. The question then is, how would the ruling party respond? With facts, respond with new policies? The critical factor here is that things are getting out of hand. And primarily, it's not a question of you ask for this job, you do it. But so far, not so well. And the president has to respond, but primarily the PDP is right to say resign. But nobody expects that it has any legal consequence. I mean, you don't go to the parliament tomorrow and say maybe the president has not resigned, let's impeach him. I mean, this is just a moral argument.
Persuasion, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I mean, for the PDP they are finding their voice now, you know. Until now, Labour seems to be the dominant opposition voice that will hear and said, look, if we're there, or this is how to fix the situation. Do you think the APC is being responsive to the present situation, really?
I think not much as we desired. I mean, there have been prevarications, you know, blackmail. For example, I've had APC leadership, so the spokesperson, sometimes they say enemies, you know, politicians are weaponizing. I mean, once they say this security is not as it is. In fact, they even say we are better off. I mean, some of those things that fly in the face of logic. So they have prevaricated, they have been very evasive. They have not really shown, you know, leadership in trying to handle this matter. Even if you don't solve the problem, I mean, the quality of policy interventions, I mean, look at the way we've been handling this cost of living crisis. We move from, you know, some people say import, some people say, you know, lock up shops, some people say, like governor of Niger State says, won't allow any big movement of food items out of our state.
And they are implementing that.
And that's autarky, in the sense that this is not really a policy that's well thought out. This is not the way to respond to closing borders, maybe, sealing stores and that. So far, their response has been not optimal. It hasn't shown the level of rigor. And it doesn't show that they really anticipated this crisis. In a sense, you can say that the government lacked a sense of, maybe understanding or grip of this crisis. Again, they have also gone, overdrive on propaganda. I mean, there's a little you can do with propaganda. Communication should flow from action. So,
but Nigerians can see the situation.
Exactly.
They
so
feel
you
it. So what do you want to come and tell the
failure.
people?
I mean, you need to be doing something and communicating it. So far, I think they are doing more of trying to communicate with nothing.
Do we have the right economic managers in place? Let me just quickly add this. I'm re-emphasizing this again. The CBN governor came out to reel out, you understand, some of the saints of the commercial banks. How they've kept over $7 billion, not giving it to customers or manufacturers who really need them for whatever reason. What sanctions, for example, has been brought to bear? Yeah. What critical policies are being churned out by the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy?
First, chaos. I mean, first is, it looks like Buhari. And now looks at Tinubu, it goes back to Buhari. The policy, vacillation, they don't really, it's not defined. It really, are they coming to continue Buhari's,
but that's what President Tinubu said. He said policy. He's going to continue with the policy.
So if you continue with that, then stop talking about how Emefiele defended dollar, naira, with so trillion. I mean, the first idea we're going to float. Now, we're coming back to either manage float or no float. The first idea was subsidy. Now we're coming back to say we're spending even more than we thought on subsidy. So there's chaos. There's lack of coordination. And then the question of competence also is in question. I mean, if you watch the optics of the central bank governor reading answers to questions, I've never seen it anywhere in the world. I mean, I can understand you have pre-questions sent to you, before the event. So you go through them, then maybe you make your notes, and then you talk out of them. But the fact that you're going to read script to respond to answer doesn't tell anybody that, look, this is, I mean, he may be a very big, great guy, academic, but so far, performance does not show that great understanding about what to do.
Yeah, because the naira keeps falling.
No policy that I've thought out has been coherent, has been respectable, and has been effective. So yes, maybe there's a question. It's good faith to question the competence of the economic team, from the Minister of Finance to the central bank governor and the aides. Now look at the response to the energy, the subsidy removal. We talked about CCNG. So I was member of that committee. The needle has not moved. Reversals and reversals. And in the first place, in that meeting, it was clear to me that the people on the table don't even have the knowledge about the issue very well. They didn't even plan it. So up to today, I doubt if there is any coherent policy and roadmap of implementation to address that issue.
Compressed national gas
issue. So that's how most of the policies of government has been.
Let's quickly look at dough politics. I mean, it's now being fraught again with a lot of crises. Well, the chairman of the election council or committee there, the governor of Imo State, Opus Odima, has announced Idahosa, a member of the House of Representatives from Ovia, as the winner of that election, scoring over 40,000 votes. Meanwhile, another faction is declared Ekpoholo, the winner of the same APC primary election. Confusion everywhere.
I think you should expect that from Nigerian major political parties. Their primaries are just, sometimes, to best word, manipulated. But look at it this way. The Electoral Act specifies how primaries should be conducted. The Electoral Act says INEC should be notified. The Electoral Act says INEC observes it. I've always argued that those are regulatory processes. So INEC is there in the room. So if, as we saw in the optics, the video, bedlam, some scattered, tables top turned, whatever. INEC observers, accredited observers, to the accredited primary, should be able to report back to INEC and say, we can testify that the primary did not complete, or this is the winner, the true winner. So the problem is that INEC is complicit, both in the criminality and in the incompetence. The authentic report of a primary, according to the Electoral Act, should be INEC's report. So whereas it's the party that chooses their candidate, it's actually INEC that confirms that that process meets
the due process.
So if INEC was there, we shouldn't be second guessing whether it's this faction or that. INEC report will tell you, as at X hour, 000 whatever, as they write it, talks broken, scatter the place. So no primary. INEC report will tell you that actually votes were transparent and completed, and X, not Y, won. So the point is that INEC continues to make themselves lame duck. You know, it's like routine, and the courts themselves have not recognized that the parties have a right to choose their candidate, but they have a right to choose the candidate according to the laws they have led. And the person who will now provide the credible evidence of how the parties acted is the INEC observer, because that's what the law says. So yes, the party said, who is the party? The party is not Hopus Adema who declared the result or some other person who claimed. The party is that process which the NWC authorized, told INEC to come observe. INEC sends a witness, and so when INEC is now regulatory, INEC is not the one who will now say, based on this report, this return is invalid. So INEC is not choosing the winner for you. INEC is saying you didn't choose the winner properly. So until we regulate what the parties do in this very strict way, we're going to have these primaries that are going to be, they say. I mean, sometimes shambolic. Sometimes it doesn't even happen. I mean, look at the story. Midway, talks stormed the place. Scattered. I can see cameras and laptops and tables upturned. And so would that really amount to what the Electoral Act provides as democratically elected candidates? That's not. So there's now a conspiracy by the parties and the INEC with their indolence and doing nothing to undermine the very essence of the electoral reform of 2022. It just wanted to do three things. One, democratize primaries. Two, create transparent electronic-based accuracy result to the IRF and the portal. And the third one, create a process in which voting can complete on that. So the whole idea that the Electoral Act seeks to achieve, they have destroyed it by not doing what they ought to do. We saw that with what happened in Uyo when they were talking about the Senate president, whether he was properly elected. And the argument is, what does the INEC report say? That's the key issue here.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, and let's see what INEC report will be saying in the Edo APC primaries. But Dr. Sam, don't go away. We're going to take some messages and continue the discourse in another issue. Dr. Sam Amadi is still here with me, and together we'll look at some of these issues. Let's quickly start with the issue of food security, the issue of smuggling Nigerian products to other countries with the high costs of these agricultural products, which is better for the farmer or the traders to sell in Nigeria or to export them to neighboring countries?
I doubt if there's a significant exportation of this product out of our border, because look, if the argument is that high rising cost, then economically it makes sense to sell in country than out of the country. Again, even if there are some of those movements out of the country, I think maybe it's cost of normal business, normal transaction. Let's not forget that some of these countries share communities, and
not forgetting the trans-Saharan trade routes.
Absolutely. So there could be some, but that's not what's driving the crisis. The crisis is 3 points. One is insecurity. I mean, look at even that story. You see the communities, they're talking about insecurity in Sokoto. Maybe they can't go to farm in some of these farming communities. So you need to focus on that. You need to focus on the production. I think it's less than the demand. Again, if you look at logistics of moving these goods, insecurity also adds to the logistic cost. So bad roads. You also talk about the whole danger of banditry, kidnapping. They further add to the cost. And then, of course, we talk about these farmers. These farmers are also going to spend money. They buy from the other market. So they also increase the cost of the product they are selling. So invariably, these are the 3 factors driving, cost. Yeah. So I doubt if they closing the borders or stopping people moving goods to maybe across the border is really the challenge. Again, if you look at what has happened, the irony is that Abacha, under Abacha's government and during the military rule, we had few instances of where there was this kind of command and control, where tax force going to, in a bid to bring down inflation, they go into offices, force people to sell goods in their warehouse. And in a democracy, we are even doing worse. We are now trying to imitate the same authoritarian and anti-democratic, anti-law-based process where we're going to almost commandeer people. Now, look at issues. I heard the Minister of Work talked about, maybe...
Yeah, we're going to come to that, so, between cement manufacturers and the rest.
So if you look at it, if there is extortionary pricing, it's a technical issue that FCCP has a procedure to go through. I mean, either there's collusion, there's some kind of monopolistic tendencies in the market fixing, price fixing. Those are technical. I chaired the Senate committee that finally worked on that FCCP Act. And so we know that those were covered. They have to trigger process, citation. So if company X is involved, there must be a procedure. You don't just say, oh, because they're selling the product that used to be 10,000, now 12,000. How about the input cost that has risen? How about the importation? Some of the products might be imported, like
energy cost,
transport cost, labor cost, because we, for example, everybody has increased the salary of most people.
So why has the FCCP not shut down these cement companies because of the rising costs?
Well, exactly.
Why would they go to Sahad?
And the point is, even if they have they done a comparative pricing, take Sahad each product by each product.
To other stores and the rest.
Because as a process, you have to show that really there's some inordinate extortionary pricing here.
But isn't it a matter of choice and left for the consumer to either patronize or not go there?
As a matter of fact, there's a consumer choice, but what the regulator can protect, if they have evidence, information of collusion, oligopolistic practices.
Are we not seeing it? Are we not seeing it in the cement industry?
The cement industry is where they have to go in, not go in by calling a meeting and speaking to their patriotism. Is to get information around pricing methodology. Why is it that they are all at the center? Is it because inputs have increased? So if there are economic factors driving this change, then you can't penalize them for the fact that those costs are real. I mean, maybe they've increased cost of energy, fuel. When you unlock your dollar, when you remove fuel subsidy, then you're going to have trickle-down effect of all these changes. So if you factor orders and something still tells you that something is odd, then you have to investigate and sanction. So I think that you should move with the cement companies and say, look, are they colluding? Because these are few almost like monopolies. I mean, Dangote is the lead guy here, maybe BUA.
But you have Boad there, you have Lafarge.
So they are still small.
But they didn't invite Ibeto. I don't know if
I don't know whether it's
still...
but the point I'm making is that few people, the cost of collusion is low, and there could be collusion. So you need to investigate whether there's a collusion. And you have to always look at the pricing and look at the input to that pricing and then tell yourself that this pricing looks extraordinary, different. So if there's a oligopolistic structure in this market where somebody controls 80% or they can bring the 20% in and then force the other guy, Ibeto is almost like out of the game. Cement is where you can conduct real investigation, but not meetings and call them and say, look, we are patriots, let's bring the price. So I think there's a certain lack of intelligence, so to say, in the way governments handle this problem. And it's because they are driven by politics. The whole protest has created a kind of urgency, false urgency and hysteria. And they are reacting, they are reactive, rather than sitting back and look at the policy landscape and say, where can we trigger and intervene? It's
obvious that the present administration is in a hurry to deliver housing to the people with a 200 billion naira fund to the Federal Housing Authority. I think you would agree with them that there is need to hold this meeting. Dr. Sam Amadi, analyst, thanks so very much.
Thank you
for coming on News Night.